I reached the door, snow melting in my hair, pie in hand. The welcoming slap stung before the spoons even stopped clinking. "Because you were late," my stepmother said. "Dad just passed the gravy," indifferent as if watching television. I stood there, tasting blood and cinnamon, realizing this Christmas was the last time I would be their appliance. If they wanted a lesson, I'd give them an entire curriculum, complete with evidence and an audience. My name is Elena Voss. At 30 years old, I was a senior clinical operations specialist at Arden Biomedical in Denver. My job was to manage the logistics of multi-site drug trials, ensuring protocols were followed with millimeter precision. I was good at it. I was organized, detached, and efficient. My name on a project charter meant it would get done. Then came Christmas. This meant returning to the frozen landscape of Lakewood Ridge, Minnesota, a town that felt preserved in amber, smelling of pine needles and diesel. The flight from Denver was a jarring transition, a rapid descent from the crisp, anonymous altitude of my professional life into the damp, heavy gravity of my past. The cold hit me the second I stepped out of the tiny regional airport, a familiar, punishing slap that went straight to the bone. I drove the rental car through streets lined with cold Christmas lights, tiny bulbs of blue and white shivering against the darkening sky. The town church bells chimed, a hollow sound cutting through the falling snow. It was a perfect picture of holiday warmth, a postcard I was never really in. Pulling into the driveway of my childhood home was the final click of the lock. The house was bright, warm, and loud, but the warmth never seemed to reach me. I walked in, carrying my bags and a stack of brightly wrapped presents for my half-brother and half-sister, Marla's younger children. "You're here," Marla said, not looking up from the stove. It was a statement of fact, not a welcome. "Put the bags in the hall and get started on the relish tray. Brielle needs help setting the table. I am the good daughter, or rather, the good daughter machine." My role in this house was as fixed as the plumbing. Within 5 minutes, my coat was off, my professional identity shed, and I was Elena, the domestic appliance. My hands, which hours before had been signing off on multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical shipments, were now automatically slicing olives, arranging celery sticks, and polishing the silver. I cooked, I served, I cleaned. It was the rhythm of my visits, a liturgy of compliance everyone had long since stopped noticing. They did not ask. They issued commands. "Elena, find the good napkins. Elena, the kids are hungry. Make them a snack. Elena, your father needs more coffee." My father, Robert Kent, sat in his armchair, the newspaper a shield between him and the world. He is a man built of silence, a man who traded his voice for a fragile peace many years ago. He believes that by ignoring conflict, it ceases to exist. He would rather swallow poison than raise his voice, and in doing so, he made us all drink it with him. He nodded when I came in, a slight dip of the chin, and returned to his paper. Marla Kent, my stepmother, was his opposite. She was all sound and sharp edges, a small, bird-like woman who ran the house and the family's finances with a terrifying, cheerful precision. She was the queen of the passive-aggressive dig, the master of the guilt-laced request. Her voice was the soundtrack to the house, a constant stream of chatter, orders, and subtle corrections. And then there was Brielle, my half-sister, Marla's 22-year-old pride. Brielle was selling some kind of fast fashion online, a career that seemed to consist entirely of filming herself pouting into her phone. She was permanently backlit by a ring light, even at the dinner table, narrating her life to a faceless audience. "Hey guys, just getting ready for Christmas dinner. My sister is finally here to help. Say hi, Elena." I did not say hi. I just carried the plates past her lens, a blurry background figure in her curated world. She was the spoiled, golden child, the one for whom the rules bent and the budget stretched. As I set the table, my thumb brushed against it. The scratch. It was a deep, jagged gouge in the dark oak, right by my father's setting. It had been there since my 12th birthday, or what was supposed to be my birthday celebration. I'd come home to find the bike I'd saved for, The red one I'd pointed out a dozen times, being ridden down the driveway by a beaming, younger Brielle. We decided she needed it more, Marla had explained. Not unkindly. I had apparently thrown my fork. I don't remember throwing it. I only remember the screech it made, and the silence that followed. The scratch was never sanded down, never polished. It was just a flaw we all learned to eat around, a permanent reminder of a wound that was never allowed to be one. My life in Denver was a world away. Last month, I had received a major promotion. I was now managing the entire North American oncology portfolio. I had called home, excited, the words tumbling out. "That's nice, dear," Marla had said. "Now, about the casserole recipe you promised me." I'd click the phone off later, the silence in my sterile Denver apartment feeling vast. I remembered my 25th birthday, completely forgotten until I called them, only to hear they were at the lake for Brielle's much-needed spa weekend. I remembered the late-night drives, the 2-hour round trips in college to pick up Brielle from parties she wasn't supposed to be at, my headlights cutting through the Minnesota darkness, all to keep the peace for my father. It wasn't even anger anymore. Anger requires energy, a belief that things could be different. This was just a familiar emptiness, a settled dust. I was a ghost in my own history, a shadow that knew how to cook. I finished setting the table and focused on the immediate task, getting the kids settled. I handed them their gifts. They tore them open with the predictable, shrieking joy of children, and for a few minutes, the house felt almost normal. I built a small castle with my half-brother, the plastic blocks cool and smooth in my hands. No one asked about my new role. No one asked about my flight. No one asked if I was happy. Later that afternoon, I stepped out onto the back porch to grab more wood for the fire. The cold was shocking, stealing my breath. The snow was falling faster now, thick and wet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A different vibration from a text. I pulled it out. The screen lit up with an unfamiliar Minnesota number and a name, Pinecrest Leasing. I stared at it. Pinecrest Leasing, a commercial realty firm. I had no connection to them. A flicker of simple, logical confusion. A wrong number. Most likely. I let it ring, the vibration buzzing against my palm. It went to voicemail. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, the name lodging itself in my mind like a burr. It was a piece that didn't fit. A note of discord in the suffocatingly familiar score. I would deal with it later. I went back inside. The warmth of the kitchen fogged my glasses. 6 o'clock sharp. "Elena," Marla called out, basting the turkey. "Dinner is at 6, not 6:01, not 6:05, 6. "Understood," I said. The clock on the wall ticked, each second a heavy drop. 5:45, 5:50. The house was settling into its pre-dinner rhythm, the air thick with the smell of roasting meat and simmering resentment. At 5:58, just as I was placing the cranberry sauce on the table, I heard it, through the double-glazed windows, the unmistakable, high-pitched whine of tires spinning on ice. I looked out the window. Mrs. Haley, our elderly neighbor from 2 doors down, was hopelessly stuck. Her ancient sedan was skewed sideways at the end of her driveway, the wheels digging deeper into the snowdrift. I looked at the clock, 5:59. "Dinner," Marla announced from the kitchen, a commander's call to arms. My father folded his paper. Brielle arranged her phone on a tripod at her seat. The kids scrambled to the table. I walked to the hall closet. I pulled on my boots, my gloves, and my heavy Denver coat. I heard the scrape of chairs at the table behind me. "Elena? What are you doing?" Marla's voice was sharp, laced with disbelief. I opened the front door. The wind tore at me, instantly numbing my face. "Mrs. Haley is stuck," I said, not looking back. "Elena, it is 6 o'clock. Get back here." I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut, cutting off her voice. The cold was absolute. I knew what I was doing. I knew the price of this. 12 minutes, maybe 15. I knew exactly what would be waiting for me when I returned, and for the first time in my life, standing in the driving snow, I made the choice to be late. It was a small, cold, deliberate act of war. The walk back from Mrs. Haley's driveway was a study in sensory deprivation and focus. The snow muffled all sound, and the world was reduced to the crunch of my own boots and the rhythmic, stinging pulse of the wind against my cheeks. I had used the shovel from Mrs. Haley's garage to dig out her tires, my muscles burning from the unfamiliar, repetitive strain. She had cried, her voice thin and grateful, offering me cookies I refused. "You'll be late, dear. You run along." I had run, not from kindness, but from the clock. I knew I was 12 minutes past 6 o'clock. 12 minutes past the mandated hour of 6. I stood on the porch for a single, controlled breath. I stamped the caked snow from my boots. My hair was wet, plastered to my scalp in icy strands. The pumpkin pie, which I had balanced on the hood of the rental car while I shoveled, was still miraculously intact, the foil cover slick with melted snow. I shifted its weight in my numb hands, straightened my spine, and opened the door. I entered at exactly 6:12. The wall of heat hit me first, a suffocating, dense blanket thick with the smell of roasted meat, sage, and a sharp, sweet spike of cardamom from Marla's mulled wine. It was the scent of ambush. Every head at the table snapped up, not in welcome, not in concern. It was the synchronized, impatient glare of a jury interrupted, or a table of diners looking at a delivery driver who had brought the wrong order cold. My father, Robert, at the head, Marla to his left, her face tight, Brielle, phone propped against her water glass, her ring light casting a pale, artificial glow. The two younger children, confused, looking from me to their mother. Marla was out of her chair before I had the door fully closed. She didn't run. She moved with a frightening, contained velocity, her feet silent on the thick dining room rug. The cold air swirled in around my legs, carrying the last clean scent of pine, but Marla cut through it. I saw her hand rising, a pale blur against the dark red wallpaper. I had time to register the cluster of rings on her fingers, the tension in her forearm. The slap was not a movie slap. It was a dense, heavy impact, a thud of bone against bone that resonated deep inside my skull. It rocked me back on my heels. The sound was flat and absolute, instantly silencing the children's chatter. The force of it sent a violent, metallic taste blooming onto my tongue. "Because you were late." Her voice was not a shout. It was a low, guttural statement of fact, delivered with the same finality as a gavel strike. I tasted blood. To my left, my father, Robert, cleared his throat. It was a dry, rasping sound, the only one he allowed himself. He did not look at me. He did not look at Marla. He looked at the centerpiece, a gaudy arrangement of plastic holly. His hand, large and placid, moved. "Pass the gravy, please," he said to no one in general. His voice was level, almost bored. Marla, her duty done, sat back down. She picked up the heavy ceramic gravy boat and passed it, handle first, to her husband. It was a single, fluid motion, an exchange as practiced and unconscious as breathing. He took it, spooned a thick brown layer over his turkey, and passed it on. They were a machine, perfectly calibrated to ignore the grit in the gears. The two kids started to giggle, a high, nervous sound. They didn't understand the violence, only the break in protocol. "Mommy hit Lena," my half-brother whispered, delighted. "Shush," Marla snapped, her eyes still on me. Brielle, across the table, hadn't flinched. Her eyes were locked on her phone's camera, her face arranged into a mask of serene neutrality. She was live. This was content. She adjusted her hair, giving her invisible audience a small, knowing smile, as if this were all just charming, rustic family drama. I fought for balance. The pie was heavy. My cheek was on fire. A throbbing, localized heat that was already beginning to feel tight. I walked the remaining 3 steps to the table. I placed the pie on the trivet I had set out hours before. The aluminum pan made a soft, dull sound against the wood. I turned my head slowly, making sure to face the center of the table. making sure my voice would be clear. "I am late," I said, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears, clinically precise, because I was pushing Mrs. Haley's car out of the snowdrift at the end of her drive. She was blocking the plow. I waited for a response. There was none. No one said, "Is she all right?" No one said, "Oh, that's why." The only sound was the sharp, dry scrape of my father's knife against his china plate. Scrape, clink, scrape. It was a cold, metallic sound, the sound of dismissal, the sound of a world continuing to turn, leaving the inconvenient fact of my existence behind. I remained standing, the overhead dining room light, a garish chandelier Marla had insisted on, beat down on us. I could feel the red welt blooming on my left cheek, a brand. I didn't touch it. I breathed in. Once, through my nose, I tasted salt and iron. And in that second, the shock evaporated, replaced by a crystalline, cold clarity, the fog of obligation, the dull ache of wanting to be seen. It all just vanished. I was no longer a daughter. I was an auditor. This was a site visit. I began to record data. Robert Kent, position, head of table. Status, complicit, neutralized by gravy. Marla Kent, position, left of head. Status, primary aggressor, hostile. Brielle Kent, position, right of head. Status, performative, detached, compromised by external validation. The children, positions, end of table. Status, collateral, unreliable witnesses. The room was a crime scene, and I was finally seeing the evidence. Marla picked up her fork. "This family," she began, her voice regaining its familiar lecturing tone, "is built on respect, on discipline. We agreed to be here at 6. We are here at 6. We do not put elderly neighbors we see once a year ahead of our own blood. That is not the Christmas spirit. That is selfishness. Elena." I said nothing. I just watched her. "Some of us," she continued, aiming a pointed, proud look at Brielle, "are working tirelessly. Brielle is Gongun an entire online brand, trying to build something for this family's future. She understands commitment. She shows up. She doesn't make excuses about snow." My eyes, scanning the table, stopped. Next to my father's plate, partially obscured by his wine glass, was a thin white business envelope. It was not a Christmas card. It was plain, cheap paper. In the top left corner, printed in a simple sans serif font, was a logo, 2 stylized pine trees and a name. Pinecrest Leasing. The name from the missed call. The first puzzle piece, it hadn't been a wrong number. It was here, on this table, at this dinner. My father, who never handled a bill, who retreated from all domestic logistics, had an envelope from a commercial leasing company next to his plate. A high-pitched, affected voice cut through my thoughts. It was Brielle, speaking to her phone. "So, you guys," the response to the holiday drop has been just, insane, she cooed, oblivious to the envelope, to my face, to anything outside her glowing rectangle. "And I have a super exciting secret to share soon. We're getting so much support that the new shop, well, let's just say it will definitely be reopening after winter. Maybe even sooner if the cash flow comes through in time. It's going to be major." The new shop, the one that had mysteriously closed in October, supposedly due to supply chain issues, Pinecrest Leasing, commercial real estate, cash flow. The pieces were no longer falling. They were being forced into place. My father, having finished his gravy, looked at me. It was the first time he had made eye contact. His eyes were flat, impatient. "Elena," he said, his voice the command of a man used to being obeyed without asking, "pour the wine for our guests." It was the same command as every year. I was the designated server. The bottle of red, already breathing, sat on the sideboard. Marla's cousins, the guests, were watching me, their faces a mixture of pity and curiosity. This was the test, the final ritual of my compliance. Pick up the bottle, serve the masters, Absorb the blow. Continue the performance. I did not move. I held my father's gaze. I let him see the red mark on my cheek. I let him see the absence of tears. I let him see the utter, complete stillness. The silence stretched. It became taut, heavy, and unbearable for them. Marla's mouth opened, a sharp intake of breath to issue the next command. Before she could speak, I turned. I walked away from the table. I heard the collective, sharp intake of breath, a quiet gasp of disbelief from the cousins. I walked through the dining room, down the short hall, and into the downstairs guest bathroom. I closed the door. I turned the lock. The click was loud in the small, tiled room. I leaned against the door, my hands gripping the porcelain sink. I turned on the cold water, the sound of it rushing into the basin a welcome, neutral noise. I cupped my hands and brought the icy water to my face. I washed away the single, tiny drop of blood from the corner of my mouth. I splashed the water again and again onto my stinging cheek, the cold a brutal, welcome relief. I grabbed a hand towel and pressed it to my skin, breathing slowly, in, out. My heart rate was not elevated. My hands were not shaking. I was perfectly, terrifyingly calm. I lifted my head and looked at myself in the medicine cabinet mirror. The stranger staring back was Elena Voss. Her left cheek was a bright, angry red, already darkening to a bruise. Her hair was damp and wild. Her eyes were clear, focused, and utterly devoid of fear. And then, I saw her smile. It was very slight. It barely touched the corners of her mouth. It did not reach her eyes. It was the smile of a scientist who has just isolated a variable. The smile of an auditor who has found the discrepancy. The switch had been flipped. The machine was offline. The lock was broken. I was no longer the good daughter. I was a problem to be solved. And I was very, very good at solving problems. I stood in the bathroom for 3 full minutes. I did not return to the mirror. I simply stood, pressing the cold, damp towel to my cheek, and listened. I heard the muffled clink of silverware. I heard my father's low, indistinct rumble. I heard Marla's sharp, performative laugh. Dinner was proceeding. The interruption was over. The appliance had malfunctioned, been disciplined, and the household had recalibrated. I was already irrelevant again. I folded the towel, placed it neatly on the counter, unlocked the door, and walked back to the dining room. Every eye snapped to me again. I felt their collective, unspoken judgment. The drama queen, the disruption. I sat down in my chair. I picked up my fork and knife. I looked at the congealing food on my plate. The turkey, the stuffing, the glazed carrots. I cut a small piece of turkey. I put it in my mouth. I chewed, slowly, and I swallowed. The rest of the dinner passed in a state of suspended animation. I was there, a physical presence at the table, but my mind was elsewhere. It was in my pocket, on the phone. It was on the sideboard, with the Pinecrest leasing envelope that my father had, at some point, discreetly slipped into his jacket. I listened. I recorded. Brielle talked about her analytics, how her engagement was literally off the charts. Marla talked about the cost of the new siding on the house, complaining about the contractors. My father said nothing, eating with his head down, a study in deliberate, profound absence. I ate 2 full slices of the pumpkin pie I had brought. I served the children. I nodded when Marla's cousin asked me a banal question about the snow in Denver. I was the perfect, obedient daughter. My cheek throbbed with a low, steady pulse, a physical metronome counting down the seconds until I could be alone. When I finally cleared the last plate, excused myself, and walked up the creaking stairs to my old bedroom, now a guest room, all traces of my childhood painted over in a sterile beige, it was almost 11. The house was dark. The only sound was the wind rattling the storm windows. I closed my bedroom door, locking it silently. I sat on the edge of the twin bed and pulled out my phone. 1 missed call, 1 new voicemail, Pinecrest Leasing. I pressed play, holding the phone tight to my ear. This is Mark Jennings from Pinecrest Leasing. A tired, professional voice began. This message is for Elena Voss. We are calling regarding the account for Brielle's Boutique, located at 473 Main Street. We have sent multiple notices to the email on file regarding the overdue payment for the past 2 quarters. The lease is currently in default. We are calling to inform you that as the personal guarantor, you are now responsible for the full accelerated balance of the lease, totaling $62,040, due immediately. An email with the formal default notice has been sent. Please contact our office immediately, Ms. Voss, or we will be forced to proceed with collections. I played it again. Personal guarantor, Elena Voss. $62,000. It was not a hot shock. It was a cold one. It was the feeling of stepping on ice and realizing it was not ice, but a void, a silent, numbing compression in my chest. Someone had taken my name, my credit, my entire professional identity, and strapped it to Brielle's failing vanity project like a bomb. My hands did not shake. My training took over. I was no longer a daughter. I was a clinical operations specialist facing a catastrophic protocol failure. I needed data. I needed a timeline. I opened my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating my face, my throbbing cheek. I connected to the house's slow Wi-Fi. I opened my email. I searched my spam folder. Pinecrest. There it was. Sent 3 days ago. Subject: Action required. Default notification on lease agreement 473 Main. I opened it, and I opened the attachment, the PDF. The lease agreement, a standard, 20-page commercial contract. I scrolled past the boilerplate to the last page, the signature page. Tenant: Brielle's Boutique, LLC, signed, Brielle Kent, owner. Landlord: Pinecrest Leasing, signed, Mark Jennings, property manager. And then, below that, personal guarantor. This guarantee is absolute and unconditional. And a signature, E. Voss. I stared at it. It was my name. It looked like my signature, but it wasn't. It was too precise. My real signature is a rushed, impatient scrawl. The E barely formed. This one was perfect. It was the signature of someone who had practiced. It was a careful, deliberate, and damning forgery. Where did they get it? My mind flashed, a series of quick, cold images. It was last summer. No, longer. 18 months ago. I was home for a long weekend. Standing in the kitchen, Marla was at the counter, her hands covered in flour, a FedEx driver at the door, holding a digital scanner. Elena, honey, be a dear, and sign for this package. My hands are a mess. I had taken the stylus, scribbled E. Voss on the small, glowing screen, and handed it back, a perfect, isolated, digital specimen, captured. The signature was the specimen. But what about the means? Another flash. 2, maybe 3 years ago, tax season, Marla at this same dining room table, surrounded by papers. Elena, I'm doing the family taxes. The accountant says it's just so much easier if I have everyone's social security number in one file. Instead of chasing you down every April, can you text it to me? It just simplifies the family file. I had, because I was the good daughter, because I trusted her, because it was easier for the family. They had the means. They had the specimen. They had built a financial weapon using my life as the raw material. I leaned back, the breath leaving my body in a single, cold rush. This was not a moment of desperation. This was a conspiracy, 18 months in the running. My first instinct was to call my legal team at Arden, but this was not a corporate issue. This was rot, deep and personal. I thought of Everett Lane. I had worked with Everett 2 years ago on a pro bono project, a healthcare access initiative for underserved communities in Denver. He was a labor lawyer, technically, but his mind was a steel trap, and his ethics were absolute. He was sharp, kind, and he did not tolerate bullies. I looked at the clock. It was past 10:30 in Minnesota, past 9:30 in Denver. I dialed his personal cell. He picked up on the second ring. Lane. Everett, It's Elena Voss. I'm sorry to call so late. Elena, no problem. What's wrong? You sound... I'm in a situation, I said, my voice flat, professional. I was reporting an adverse event. I'm at my father's house in Minnesota for Christmas. I have just discovered my identity has been used to secure a $62,000 commercial lease. The primary actors appear to be my stepmother and half-sister. There was a silence on the line, not of shock, but of focus. Tell me everything, he said. I did. I laid it out with clinical precision. The slap, the envelope with the Pinecrest logo, Brielle's live stream slip-up, the voicemail, the forged signature on the PDF, the captured digital signature, the text message with my SSN. Okay, Everett said when I finished. His voice was low, hard. First things first. Are you safe? You are physically in the house with them? Yes, I said. I'm locked in my room. Good. Stay there. You are not a daughter right now. Elena, you are a hostile witness in enemy territory. Your absolute priority is data preservation. You do not confront them. You do not accuse. You will lose the element of surprise and they will destroy evidence. Am I clear? Crystal. Good. First, you need to pull your own credit. Now, tonight. I want to see what else is on there. You use a monitoring service? I do. Log in. Look for any hard inquiries or new accounts you don't recognize. Second, photograph that envelope. If you can get it without them knowing, do it. But don't risk it if you can't. Third, from this moment on, you will record any call you have with Pinecrest or any bank involved. Minnesota is a one-party consent state. You are the one party. You just inform them the call is being recorded for your records. We need their admission that you are the one on the hook. We need their paper trail. What about the slap? I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. That's battery, he said, his voice tight with anger. We'll deal with the assault charge later. Right now. We follow the money. Call me back as soon as you pull the report. I hung up. I navigated to my credit monitoring service. My FICO score was 810. Pristine. Of course it was. They would have made the initial payments, piggybacking on my credit to build their dream, until they couldn't. I clicked full report, and there it was. 18 months ago, a hard inquiry from North Bank and Trust, a small local Lakewood Ridge institution, and a new account opened the same day. A personal loan, $5,000? It wasn't just the lease. They had taken out a loan in my name. I knew instantly what it was for. The security deposit, the cash flow Brielle had been talking about, the seed money to get the lease started. 18 months, an entire year and a half of calculated, deliberate fraud. Marla, the bookkeeper, moving my name around like a pawn on her personal board. Brielle, the beneficiary, smiling into her camera. The pieces clicked into place with the horrifying finality of a scalpel tray being set. But one piece still didn't fit. The envelope. It had been next to Robert's plate. My father, the man who passed the gravy while my face was bleeding. Was his silence just cowardice? His lifelong strategy of passive non-existence? Or was this something darker? Was he a willing participant? Did he know his daughter's identity was being systematically plundered to fund his stepdaughter's fantasy, and he simply let it happen? The pain of that question was sharper than the slap. It was a deep, structural damage. I closed the laptop. The room was dark, the only light from the moon on the snow outside. I looked at my reflection in the black window. The bruise was already turning a deep, ugly purple. I would not cry. Crying was a release, and I needed the pressure. I would not scream. Screaming was a loss of control. They had written me into their story as a resource, an appliance, and a victim. Fine. I would write a new script for this Christmas, one where I was the author, and in my version, the accounts would be balanced, down to the very last cent. I woke up on the morning of December 24th before the sun. The house was cold and silent, weighed down by the fresh overnight snow and the unexploded ordnance from the night before. My cheek was a stiff, mottled canvas of purple and yellow, a grotesque holiday decoration, I had slept for perhaps 2 hours, my mind working in overdrive, processing the data from North Bank and Trust, reviewing the forged lease. My phone buzzed at 4:30 a.m., a single text from Everett. I'm at the airport, picked up a rental, the Daily Grind Cafe, 8 a.m. I've already confirmed Mark Jennings from Pinecrest will be there. He had flown from Denver to Minneapolis overnight and driven 2 hours north in a blizzard. The sheer, stabilizing force of his competence was the only thing holding my reality together. I dressed in the dark, choosing my most severe professional clothes: dark wool trousers, a silk shell, a black blazer, armor. I bypassed the creaking stair and took the back service steps, a route I hadn't used in years. I was out of the house by 7. The rental car's engine a welcome, impersonal roar in the pre-dawn stillness. The Daily Grind was neutral territory, a small cafe smelling of burnt coffee and cinnamon buns. Everett was already there, sitting in a back booth, his overcoat still on. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. A briefcase sat on the table next to him. "Elena," he said, standing as I approached. He looked at my cheek, and his expression hardened into a kind of controlled, professional rage. But he didn't comment on it. He simply motioned for me to sit. "He'll be here in 5. "You got here fast," I said, my voice husky. "Identity theft on this scale isn't a wait until after the holidays problem," Everett said. He opened his briefcase and took out a yellow legal pad and a pen. "I'm here as your counsel. You will not speak unless I ask you to confirm a fact. You are here to listen and observe. We are gathering facts, not making accusations. Let him talk." At 8 o'clock on the dot, Mark Jennings walked in. He was a man in his 50s, wearing a cheap suit, his face etched with the weary stress of a small-town property manager. He looked at me, then at Everett, and his anxiety visibly ratcheted up. "Mr. Jennings," Everett said, not bothering with introductions. "Thank you for coming. This is Elena Voss." "Ms. Voss?" Jennings said, nodding, his eyes darting to my bruise and then quickly away. He sat down, clutching his own worn briefcase. "As I explained on the phone, Mr. Jennings," Everett continued, his voice smooth and authoritative, "we are here to review the documentation related to the lease for Brielle's boutique. My client has reason to believe she is the victim of significant financial fraud. We need to see the complete, original application file. Now." Jennings, clearly spooked by the presence of an out-of-town lawyer, didn't argue. He opened his case and slid a thick manila folder across the table. "This is it. This is everything we have. Look, we just want what's owed. 62,000, plus fees." Everett held up a hand, silencing him. He opened the folder. I leaned in, my heart a cold, hard knot in my chest. And there it was, my life, hollowed out and used as scaffolding. "Application for Brielle's boutique," Everett read, his finger tracking down the page. "Personal guarantor, Elena Voss." He turned the page. Item 4, proof of income, guarantor. Attached was a scanned copy of a payslip. My payslip, from Arden Biomedical. It was from 2 years ago, but it was real. It showed my salary, my title, my deductions. It was a snapshot of my success, of my entire life in Denver, stapled to my sister's lie. I felt a surge of violations so profound it almost choked me. They hadn't just stolen my name, they had stolen my work. "Where did you get this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Everett put a hand on my arm, a silent, "Stay calm." He turned another page. "What is this?" he asked, pointing to a single sheet of paper. "That's the family consent form," Jennings said, shifting. "We require it for co-signers on new businesses. Just a statement that the immediate family is aware of the financial obligation." Everett slid it over to me. It was a simple typed statement. "I, Robert Kent, as head of household, consent to and support the financial guarantee provided by my daughter, Elena Voss, for the Brielle's boutique lease." And a signature. Robert Kent. My father's signature. I knew it as well as my own. It was unmistakable. He had signed it. He had known. He was a participant. My breath hitched. Everett, his eyes scanning the document, pointed to the top corner. "The date," he said quietly. The date was typed. October 10th, but next to it, the year was handwritten. 2023. It was written in a different ink. A fine point blue, slightly shaky, but the signature, Robert Kent, was in a thick black ballpoint. "The date was added later," Everett said. "It was a statement, not a question." Jennings paled. "I wouldn't know about that. It's how we received it." Everett continued to flip through the file. The guarantee notice, the default notices, they were sent to an email address, voss@gmail.com. "Is that your email, Elena?" "No," I said. "And to a mailing address, 422 Sycamore Lane, COO Marla Kent." "That's my father's address," I said. "Care of Marla Kent." "Last night, I sent a preservation request to the Lakewood postmaster," Everett said, looking at Jennings. "He was extremely helpful. The security footage from 18 months ago, corresponding to the delivery of the original lease guarantee documents, shows Marla Kent signing for the certified mail. It was never delivered to my client." Everett closed the folder. "Mr. Jennings, how were the rent payments made?" "Cash," Jennings said immediately. "For the first year, always in cash, dropped off by Marla Kent. It was unusual, but it always cleared. Until 6 months ago, then nothing." Of course, cash, Marla, the bookkeeper, taking cash from the family accounts, paying the lease in a way that couldn't be traced back to her or Brielle, untraceable, until the money ran out. "And North Bank and Trust?" Everett pressed. "The $5,000 startup loan?" Jennings looked confused. "That wasn't through us. We just got the security deposit, a bank check." Everett's phone buzzed. He looked at it. "An email, an automated one, forwarded from your primary account, Elena, from North Bank, dated 18 months ago. Welcome, Elena Voss. You have been successfully added as an authentication contact for the account ending in 4402. They didn't just use your name, they added your primary identity as the backup for the fraudulent one, likely through a friendly teller. Marla's been in this town her whole life. She has connections." Everett stacked the papers neatly. "Mr. Jennings, we appreciate your cooperation. You are now in possession of knowledge that this lease is fraudulent. All collection activities against my client must cease immediately. You will be hearing from my office." Jennings nodded, grabbed his empty folder, and practically fled the cafe. I sat there, staring into my cold coffee. "So, he knew," I said. It wasn't a question. "My father signed it." "He signed something," Everett corrected, his voice gentle but precise. "We don't know what he was told he was signing, but yes, his signature is on it." He put the file into his own briefcase and snapped it shut. "I'm building the case," he said. "We have identity theft, multiple counts of document forgery, mail fraud, and wire fraud. That's before we even get to the $5,000 loan. This is extensive. Elena, this is criminal." I looked out the window at the snow, at the festive wreaths on the lampposts. "I don't want them to go to jail," I said, the words tasting like ash. The kids." "I understand," Everett said, "but that choice is yours. Our first goal is to make you whole, to sever your name from this. The first step is a formal notice of dispute to Pinecrest, North Bank, and all 3 credit bureaus. We'll file it today." He paused, then looked at his legal pad. "I did one more thing this morning. When you mentioned your father's involvement, I did a broader asset search. There's something else." "What?" "Your father has a private retirement fund, separate from his pension, through a company called Hearthline Mutual. It's a significant portfolio. His entire inheritance from your grandparents." "I know it," I said. "My name is on it. I'm the primary beneficiary. My mother set it up that way before she died. It's ironclad." Everett looked at me, his gaze steady and full of a quiet pity that I suddenly couldn't bear. He changed it, Elena. I just stared at him. 6 months ago, Everett said, reading from his notes. The same time the rent payments to Pinecrest stopped. The primary beneficiary on the Hearthline Mutual Fund was changed. It's no longer you. Who? I whispered, though I already knew the answer. Brielle Kent. The breath left my body. This was not a slap. This was an amputation. My father's legacy, my grandparents' money, gone, handed to Brielle. How? I managed to say. He couldn't. My mother's will. He could, with your consent, Everett said, which, according to the document filed with Hearthline, he received. They have a scanned spousal and heir consent form, dated June 3rd, signed by Elena Voss. Another forgery, a deeper one, a more profound and absolute theft. They hadn't just stolen my credit to build her a future. They had stolen my past, my inheritance, to pay for her failure. I stood up. I was perfectly calm. The cafe noise faded. The world had snapped into a terrible, sharp focus. The question from last night, did he know, or was he ignorant, was answered. It didn't matter. He was complicit. He had passed the gravy. He had signed the consent. He had given away my past and my future. I walked out of the cafe, Everett close behind me. The drive back to the house was silent. I parked the car. I walked up the snowy path. As I reached the front door, I heard it. Laughter. Brielle's high-pitched, performative laugh, coming from the living room. I walked in. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by piles of cheap, glittering tops and polyester dresses, her ring light blazing. She was on a live stream. So, it's the final Christmas Eve sale. Guys, she chirped, holding up a sequined shirt. Everything is 50% off. We have to clear the old inventory because... Secret. We are reopening after the new year. We've just secured a new round of funding. I can't say who. But we have a very generous silent investor who really believes in the brand. I stood in the hallway, snow melting from my boots onto the hardwood floor. Everett stood just behind me in the doorway, a silent, dark-suited witness. Brielle looked up, saw me, and her smile faltered for just a second. "Oh, hey, Lena," she said, recovering, turning the phone slightly toward me. "Look, guys, my sister's here. She's my biggest supporter." The silent investor. She wasn't talking about a new person. She was talking about a new line of credit. She was talking about the retirement fund. She was talking about me. I turned from the living room, leaving Brielle to her performance. I didn't say a word. I just walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped back out into the freezing air. Everett right behind me. "She's brazen," Everett said, his voice a low growl as we got into his rental. "She's not just lying. She's advertising." "She thinks she's untouchable," I said. The cold air felt good on my bruised face. "She's been enabled her entire life. This is just the logical conclusion. Where are we going?" "My hotel. We're setting up a war room. We have less than 12 hours until this town shuts down for Christmas. We need a team, and we need to move." We didn't need a war room. We needed an audit team, a legal team, and a moral compass. We needed to build, in a matter of hours, the structure of accountability that my family had dismantled over decades. We sat in Everett's sterile hotel room, the heater blasting. He had his laptop open, a fresh legal pad in front of him. "Okay," he said, "we have the legal framework. That's me. But the case is built on 3 pillars. The lie about the dinner, the financial fraud, and the moral authority. We need people for each." "Nadia Brooks," I said, the name coming to me instantly. "She's a freelance retail auditor. Arden uses her for due diligence on small acquisitions. She's a shark. She can sniff out bad inventory and inflated sales from a mile away." "Good. Call her. Tell her it's a priority contract. I'll cover the retainer," Everett said. "I'll handle the financial institutions. I'm filing the freeze with Hearthline Mutual right now, citing suspected elder financial abuse, your father, and identity theft. That will lock the retirement fund. No one can touch it. While he dialed, his voice dropping into the precise, ironclad language of legal notice, I stepped into the hallway and called Nadia. It was Christmas Eve, but she worked on project time, not calendar time. "Voss," she answered, her voice all static and caffeine. "Nadia, it's Elena. I have an off-books emergency. I need a forensic audit of a small, single-owner online fashion boutique. Brielle's boutique." Holiday rush? Identity theft. My identity. The owner is inflating sales to secure funding based on my stolen inheritance. I need to know how fake the business is, and I need to know by this afternoon. There was a pause, then the sound of typing. Brielle's boutique, Lakewood Ridge, Minnesota. Got it. I'll need the website. Any financials you have. "I have no financials," I said. "Only the public-facing website and her social media feeds. She's live-streaming her inventory sale right now." Nadia laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "Oh, that's even better. The performers are the sloppiest. They leave everything out in the open. I'll have a preliminary report for you by 3. I went back into the room. Everett was off the phone. "Hearthline is frozen," he said. "The compliance officer is deeply concerned. They are FedExing the original forged consent form to my office. Next, Arden." He dialed our corporate legal department. I listened as he explained the situation. "We have a pay stub from Arden Biomedical being used in a fraudulent loan application." "Yes, Elena Voss is our employee. She's with me now. We need to confirm the origin of the request." There was a long hold. Everett tapped his pen. "Yes, I see. A request from a Voss family, asect@gmail.com address. Thank you. We will need a formal trace on that IP address. This is now a criminal matter." He hung up. "Confirmed. The request came from an anonymous Gmail account, not her corporate one. They have their IT team tracking the IP of origin. I'll bet you $1,000 it pings back to this house." One by one, the chains were being locked. My turn. "I need 2 local witnesses," I said. "And a stage?" Everett raised an eyebrow. "A stage?" "This isn't just about money, Everett. This is about truth. This town, Lakewood Ridge, it operates on a closed loop of reputation. Marla and Robert are seen as good, solid people. Brielle is the local golden child. I'm the cold, absent daughter from the city. If I just file a lawsuit, I'm the one who tore the family apart for money. I will lose in the court of public opinion, and they will twist it." "So, what's the play?" "This town's moral center is the church, Pastor Cole. He's known my family since before I was born, and tonight, he's hosting the Winterlight Gala at the town hall. The entire town will be there. Robert, Marla, and Brielle will be there. It's their command performance as the perfect family. That's the stage. You can't just accuse them in the middle of a party, Elena." "I'm not going to accuse them," I said. "I'm going to present the facts. But first, I need the facts." I left Everett to his calls and drove. First, to a strip mall. I bought a small, high-fidelity digital voice recorder. I sat in the parking lot and turned it on, the small red light glowing. I dialed Pinecrest Leasing. "Pinecrest, this is Mark." "Mr. Jennings, this is Elena Voss. I am recording this call for my records. I am calling to follow up on the voicemail you left regarding the default on the Brielle's boutique lease." Yes, Ms. Voss, as I said, your lawyer?" "I just need you to confirm for my records. Mr. Jennings, am I, Elena Voss, listed as the sole personal guarantor on that lease?" Yes, you are." "And what is the total amount you are holding me personally liable for?" $62,040. "Thank you." Click, 1 call down. Next, North Bank and Trust. I got a loan officer, a woman named Sharon. "Sharon, my name is Elena Voss. I am recording this call. I am looking at my credit report, and I see a $5,000 personal loan opened 18 months ago at your institution. I did not open this loan. I need you to confirm the status of that account." There was a flustered silence. Oh dear. Let me see. "Yes, that loan is in your name. Oh, It looks like it was opened by Brenda, our branch manager. She's very good friends with Marla Kent. It was done as a family transfer. Thank you. Sharon, you've confirmed it was opened in my name without my presence. I will be in touch. Click. I had the audio. Now for the moral witnesses. I drove to Mrs. Haley's. She opened the door, her face lighting up. Elena, dear. Oh, your face. That awful storm. Mrs. Haley, I said, my voice gentle. I'm in a bit of trouble. It's about last night. I sat in her small, warm kitchen. I was hit by my stepmother for being late to dinner. She said I was lying about helping you. Her face, soft and wrinkled, hardened. What? But Elena, you were a godsend. I was frantic. I need your help, I said. I'm not asking you to get involved. I just need the truth. Could you write down what happened? Just the facts. What time you got stuck? What time I arrived? Of course, dear, she said, indignant. I remember exactly. I was so worried about missing the 6 o'clock church bells on the radio program, and they chimed just as you were finishing. It was 6:08, 8 minutes past 6. You saved me. She sat at her desk and, in a steady, old-fashioned cursive, wrote out a one-page, signed, and dated testament, the alibi, the proof. My final stop was the church office. Pastor Cole was a tall, thin man who had always seemed ancient to me. He looked at me over his glasses, his eyes kind but discerning. He had seen this whole town's worth of joy and sin. Elena Voss, he said, standing. It's been a long time. Welcome home. Pastor, I said, I came to see you about the gala tonight. I'm here on behalf of my employer, the Arden Biomedical Foundation. His posture changed. This was business. We run a community grant program. I've been moved by my visit home to see the needs here. I would like to make an anonymous donation, a $5,000 scholarship for the community nursing program. We can call it the Winter Light Scholarship. The pastor was stunned. Elena, that is extraordinarily generous. We would be honored. There is one condition, I said. The foundation likes its sponsors to say a few words. I would need 5 minutes on the stage tonight, just to talk about the scholarship's theme, about the importance of making kind choices, of choosing community over convenience. Of course, he said, beaming. Absolutely. We will make time right after the opening remarks. I had my stage, I had my alibi, I had my financial proof. My phone rang as I walked to the car. It was Nadia. Okay, I'm in, she said. Her voice was electric. This is not a business. Elena, it's a house of cards. First, the website. All the sold-out items, they were all sold in 2 massive, single-day batches. That's not how inventory moves. That's a bulk dump. Second, the payment processing. I can't see the back end, but I can see the front. She's pushing gift cards. Hard. Buy a $100 card. Get 50 free. Why? Because a gift card, when purchased with cash, is an untraceable way to buy your own inventory. Self-transactions, I said, the term clicking into place. Exactly. She's churning, taking cash, probably from you, or the loan, buying gift cards, and then buying her own stock at a discount. It inflates her sales numbers, makes her look successful, and lets her report massive, fake revenue. I've cross-referenced her social media posts with the sold dates. At least 30% of her entire claimed revenue is self-generated. It's a classic, clumsy bust-out. She's not a businesswoman. Elena, she's a con artist. A bad one. I got back to the hotel. Everett was packing his briefcase. It's all in place, I said. Nadia's report is devastating, he said, looking at the email she had sent. The IP trace from Arden came back. The request for your salary originated from your father's home IP address, Marla's computer. It was the final link. Every chain was forged. Every connection solid. What now? Everett asked. Now, we get ready for the party, but I need you to know my boundaries. I have them set. He sat, and he listened. "First," I said, holding up a finger, "the children, my half-brother and half-sister, they are not to be touched. They are not to be humiliated. Their names will not be mentioned. Any settlement, any action, will not impact their college funds or their well-being. They are non-combatants." "Agreed," he said. "Second, religion. Pastor Cole is a good man, and that church is important to this town. We are not using him to attack anyone's faith. We are using that stage as a place of moral record. We are there to tell the truth, not to commit sacrilege. It's a community stage, Elena. It's perfectly defensible." "Finally," I said, the words heavy, "I don't want them in prison. I want accountability. I want a full, legal, and financial separation. I want my name cleared. I want my inheritance restored, and I want them to admit, in a legally binding way, what they did. This is not about revenge. This is about extraction. I am extracting myself from this toxic, fraudulent system. They can have their lives. They just can't have mine." Everett nodded, closing his briefcase. "Extraction. I like that. So, we stay silent until the gala." I drove back to the house alone. I walked in, my coat over my arm. The house was buzzing with festive energy. Brielle was trying on a glittering dress. Marla was on the phone, coordinating travel. My father was watching football, a beer in his hand. They were high on the adrenaline of their success, the silent investor who had saved them. "Elena," Marla called out, seeing me. "You've been gone all day. Where were you?" I smiled, the expression pulling at my bruised cheek. "Just running errands, Marla, picking up a few last-minute Christmas gifts for the gala." They believed everything was buried. They thought the slap had been absorbed, the incident forgotten, the good daughter machine reset. They had no idea that I had just spent the day building the legal and moral scaffolding for their public execution. They thought the show was theirs. They didn't know I was the new executive producer. The afternoon of December 24th was a blur of synchronized, invisible maneuvers. While the house buzzed with the sense of baking ham and festive anticipation, Everett and I finalized the 3-layered trap from his hotel room. Layer 1 was legal, precise, unforgiving. Everett drafted the formal Notice of Dispute and Cease and Desist letters, one for Pinecrest Leasing, one for North Bank and Trust. He attached a notarized copy of my real signature, the fast, impatient scrawl from my driver's license, next to a high-resolution scan of the forgery. The contrast was stark. The forgery's careful, practiced loops looking like a child's imitation. The letters demanded an immediate halt to all collection activities, pending a full criminal investigation into identity theft and forgery. He sent them via certified mail and emailed PDF copies to Mark Jennings and the North Bank Legal Department. The first shot was fired, silently. Layer 2 was financial, the hard data. Nadia Brooks, true to her word, had compiled her audit of Brielle's boutique. It was a masterpiece of forensic accounting, a slim, brutal report detailing the self-purchased gift cards, the inflated sales figures, and the inventory discrepancies. It concluded, in her dry professional language, that the business shows no evidence of organic profitability and bears all the hallmarks of a shell operation, likely for the purpose of justifying fraudulent financial backing. As instructed, she had printed it, sealed it in a large envelope, and at 2:30 p.m., personally slid it through the mail slot of Pastor Cole's office at the church. It was time-stamped by its delivery to a neutral third party, a moral failsafe. Layer 3 was the community, the stage. I confirmed my 5-minute speaking slot with the gala's coordinator. I was listed in the program simply as a representative of the Winterlight Scholarship Foundation. The scholarship was real. The donation was processing. The motive, however, was my own. It was the perfect cover, an act of generosity that would make my family lower their guard, seeing me as a benevolent, successful, and perhaps even investable figure. With the mechanism set, it was time to bait the trap. I returned to the house around 3 p.m. The atmosphere was thick with feigned cheer. Marla was directing the children, Robert was ostensibly reading the paper, and Brielle was, as always, on her phone. "There you are," Marla said, her voice strained with a sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. "Getting ready for the gala?" "Yes," I said, putting a bag on the counter. "I'm looking forward to it. I have some good news, actually, about investments. I thought we could all go together. Celebrate." This was the bait. The phrase good news and investments in the same sentence, coming from me, was irresistible to them. Marla's eyes lit up, a quick, avaricious flicker. "Oh, well, that's wonderful, dear. Of course, we'll all go." Brielle, overhearing this, immediately turned to her phone, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper for her loyal customers. "Guys, you heard it? My sister is here, and we are talking investments. I told you big things were coming. The new shop is practically guaranteed." The rumor mill was now officially open for business, churning out her own version of the narrative. Everett, meanwhile, was executing the most critical piece of stagecraft. He had been on the phone with the compliance officer at Hearthline Mutual. A package was dispatched via a special courier service, a single, thick, priority envelope. It was addressed to Mr. Robert Kent at the Sycamore Lane address. The instructions, dictated by Everett and confirmed by Hearthline's legal team, were explicit. The sealed envelope was to be delivered this evening, December 24th, and could only be opened by the legally verified primary beneficiary of the account. It was a truth bomb with a delivery timer. I went upstairs to my room to prepare for the evening. As I was laying out the severe black dress I had chosen, my phone rang. It was Marla, but her number showed up on my screen, meaning she was calling me from a different part of the house, a performance of formality. "Elena, honey," her voice was liquid gold, a sticky, cloying tone I recognized from my childhood, usually preceding an impossible request. "I'm so glad you're feeling more festive. I was just thinking, you mentioned investments. After we get back from the gala tonight, why don't we all sit down with the Christmas pie? We can finally talk shares. You know, for your part in Brielle's brand." Shares, as if I were a partner, not the cattle being sold for parts. They were so confident in their silent investor scam with the retirement fund that they thought I was now coming to the table to add to my investment. "That's a good idea, Marla," I said, my voice smooth as glass. "But the gala will be loud, and we'll be tired after. Why don't we just talk at the gala? It's warm there. We can find a quiet corner. We'll all be together." "Oh, at the gala?" She sounded hesitant, preferring the controlled environment of her own home. "Well, all right, dear. If you're sure, we'll talk then." She hung up, satisfied. She thought she had secured the meeting. She had no idea she had just walked into the public venue I had chosen. I had one last stop to make. I grabbed my keys. "Going to my apartment to get changed," I called out. "Your apartment?" Marla's voice was sharp. "What apartment?" "The one I keep in town," I said airily. "For privacy, I'll see you all at the town hall at 7. I walked out, leaving a stunned silence behind me. The small, furnished studio I'd rented 2 years ago under my own name, a sterile, safe place I used when I couldn't bear the psychic weight of that house, was now my asset. It was the designated location for the real meeting. After the public one, I drove there first. It was clean, cold, and impersonal. I walked through it, checking the sightlines. I moved the coffee table, arranging 4 chairs in a precise, confrontational square. I put a bottle of water and a glass by each one. This was not a home. This was a deposition room. I stowed away a few breakable objects, not out of fear of violence, but to remove all distraction. I then drove to Mrs. Haley's. She was waiting for me. The note in her hand, I read it, the elegant cursive, the precise time, 6:08, by the church bells. I thanked her, my voice thick with a gratitude that was about more than just the note. "You're a good girl, Elena," she said, patting my arm. "Whatever it is, you just stand in the truth. It's the only ground that holds." I folded the note, a solid, tangible piece of truth, and put it in my clutch. I returned to my apartment to get dressed. As I was zipping up my dress, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I answered. Hello? Elena? The voice was thin, hesitant. It was my father. He had never, not once in my adult life, called me on my cell phone. Dad? I just... He sounded lost. There was a long pause, filled with the static of his own indecision. I wanted to know. Are you okay? It was the question, the one he should have asked last night, the one he had never asked. Are you okay? After the slap, after the years of silence, after he signed away my inheritance. The sincerity in his voice, the audible crack in his carefully constructed wall, was the one variable I hadn't planned for. It was a flicker of the father I remembered from before my mother died, a man who read me stories and held my hand. For a second, the cold, clinical structure I had built threatened to waver. I closed my eyes. I saw the gravy boat. I saw the signature on the consent form. I saw the red welt on my face in the mirror. I opened my eyes. The auditor was back in control. "Dad," I said, my voice not unkind, but absolutely firm, devoid of the emotion he was suddenly showing. "I just want one thing from you." "Anything, Lena? What?" "Tonight, at the gala, when I am on that stage, I want you to look me in the eye." I didn't wait for a response. I hung up. I stood in the silence of my small, clean apartment. I heard his response in the click of the disconnected line. It wasn't the usual, passive silence of his avoidance. It was a new silence. It was the sound of a man who had just been handed a choice. It was the sound of the pin being pulled. The town hall was unrecognizable, swathed in white and gold. The lights were kept low, a soft yellow glow that was meant to be warm but only felt hazy, like a memory of warmth. The air smelled of mulled wine, hot cider, and the damp wool of 100 winter coats. A local quartet played slightly off-key Christmas carols, their earnestness adding to the suffocating, curated cheer. This was the Winterlight Gala, the centerpiece of Lakewood Ridge's holiday season. And there, near the entrance, was my family, making their arrival. Brielle was the center of it, of course. She wore a glittering, backless red dress that was entirely inappropriate for a church-adjacent community event, but perfect for her brand. Her phone was already out, held high on a selfie stick, her ring light casting a ghostly pale circle around her face. "Hey guys, we are live at the Winterlight Gala," she narrated, her voice an octave higher than normal. "It's so festive. Everyone is here. Say hi, Mom. Say hi, Dad." Marla, draped in a faux fur stole, waved at the camera, a practiced, benevolent smile plastered on her face. She was in her element, the gracious wife of a respected local, the matriarch. She greeted everyone by name, accepting compliments on Brielle's fabulous dress. My father was a shadow in her wake, a tall man in a good suit, nodding, smiling, his eyes already seeking the nearest exit or, failing that, the bar. I had arrived separately. I stood in the back, near the coat check, a ghost in a simple black dress. I watched them work the room. Everett was near the doors, a dark professional anchor in the sea of holiday plaid. Nadia was somewhere by the stage, blending in, watching. At 7:30, Pastor Cole walked to the small podium. The music quieted. "Welcome, friends. Welcome, Shem," he boomed, his voice full of genuine joy. "It is so wonderful to see us all gathered again, a testament to the light we keep alive in this community, even in the darkest part of winter." He spoke for a few minutes, thanking the volunteers, the bakers, the quartet. My family had taken a front table, positioning themselves as patrons of the community. Brielle's phone was set up on a small tripod, still live. "And now," Pastor Cole continued, his face glowing, "I have a truly wonderful announcement. As you know, our community college nursing program has been struggling to fund its spring scholarships. This year, We have been blessed. An anonymous donor, a foundation that wishes to remain in the background, has stepped forward. I could see Marla lean forward, her eyes bright with a sudden, sharp interest. I am thrilled to announce the creation of the Winterlight Scholarship, the pastor said, a $5,000 grant to be awarded to a student who exemplifies service to our community. The room burst into applause. It was a significant sum for this town. Marla clapped enthusiastically, her head swiveling. Her eyes were not on the pastor. They were scanning the crowd. She was searching for the investor. She was looking for the source of the money, the person she could flatter, the new power player in town. She was adding up the data. Anonymous donor, $5,000, and it wasn't matching the investment she was expecting from me. Her smile became a little tighter, her applause a little more brittle. And tonight, Pastor Cole said, we are honored to have a representative from that foundation here, someone who, in fact, grew up right here in Lakewood Ridge, to say a few words. Please welcome Ms. Elena Voss. The name dropped into the room with the weight of a stone. I heard a small, sharp intake of breath from my family's table. The polite applause was scattered, confused. I began to walk from the back of the room. The sound of my heels on the parquet floor was the only noise. I saw Marla's face, a mask of utter disbelief, her hands frozen mid-clap. I saw Brielle, her mouth slightly open, staring at me as I passed. And I saw my father. He was holding a plastic cup of punch. He was not looking at Marla. He was looking at me, just as I had asked. I reached the podium. I adjusted the microphone. I looked out at the sea of familiar, small-town faces. Thank you, Pastor Cole, I said, my voice amplified, clear and calm. It's good to be home. I smiled. My employer, the Arden Biomedical Foundation, believes strongly in community health care, but I was personally moved to nominate this scholarship by an event that happened to me just last night. I leaned in slightly. I was on my way to a very important Christmas dinner. I was running on a strict schedule, but on the way, I saw a neighbor, an elderly woman, whose car was hopelessly stuck in a snowdrift. She was distressed. She was cold. I paused. The room was silent. I knew if I stopped to help her, I would be late, exactly 12 minutes late, as it turned out. I let the number hang in the air. But it occurred to me, as I was digging her car out, that community, the real light of winter we're celebrating tonight, isn't about perfect attendance. It's not about being on time. It's about making time. I looked across the room, past the tables, and found my father's eyes. It's about choosing to help someone who is stuck, even when no one is watching, even when there's no camera pointed at you, and even when you know you might be disciplined for it. A wave of warm, genuine applause started from the back and swept the room. Mrs. Haley, sitting near the front, was beaming, nodding vigorously to her neighbors. They understood. This was the currency of their town, helping your neighbor. I had just validated their entire community ethos. I looked at my family's table. Brielle's smile was a rigid, painful grimace. Her face was pale. She was glancing down at her phone, where the live stream comments were scrolling. I could almost hear them. Ouch. Did she just call you out? LOL. No camera. Hey, Brielle, do you ever help anyone who can't help you back? She was being humiliated, silently, by an act of public generosity. My father stood frozen by the punch bowl, his cup halfway to his lips. His eyes were shining. The line about no camera had been a direct hit, a piece of shrapnel aimed at his other daughter. He was watching me, this stranger who was his blood, and the mask of his indifference was shattering. I saw his chin tremble. He was seeing, for the first time, the two daughters he had, and the chasm between them. Marla was not crying. Her face was bloodless. She was radiating a cold, reptilian fury. She understood every nuance. She knew this was not a speech. It was an indictment. She leaned over, her back to me, and grabbed Brielle's arm. I saw her mouth form the words, a vicious whisper in the midst of the applause. Close the deal. Tonight. If you don't get her money, the store is dead. They still thought this was about a negotiation. They thought my speech was a power play, a prelude to demanding better terms for my investment. They were still so far behind. As I stepped down from the stage, I saw the final pieces move. In the back, Everett, my dark-suited angel, was shaking hands with another man in an identical suit, the man from Hearthline Mutual. He had a small, official-looking briefcase. He gave Everett a curt nod and left. Everett met my eyes from across the room. He gave me a single, confirming nod. The package was delivered. The bomb was at the house, waiting. Near the stage, Nadia Brooks, in a sharp blazer, approached the gala coordinator. She was holding the sealed, thick manila envelope. "Excuse me," I heard Nadia say, her voice crisp. "This is a document for Pastor Cole's safekeeping. It's an independent audit related to the Winterlight Scholarship's donor. It's to be opened only in the event of any public dispute or financial discrepancy. Just a formality." The coordinator, flustered, took the envelope. It was brilliant. The audit was now a public failsafe, officially logged by the event staff, linking Brielle's fraudulent business directly to the scholarship I had just funded. The trap was set. The applause died down. People came up to me, patting my arm, shaking my hand. "Elena, what a wonderful thing to do. Such a beautiful speech, dear. We're so proud to have you back." I smiled. I thanked them. I was gracious. I was humble. I was the perfect, generous daughter returned home. Then, I walked a straight line to my family's table. The three of them were huddled, a tight knot of conspiracy. They fell silent as I approached. Marla looked up, her face rearranged into a mask of strained politeness. "Elena," she said, her voice tight. "That was quite a speech." "Thank you, Marla," I said. I smiled. A warm, open smile. "I'm so glad we're all here, but I'm exhausted from all the excitement. I think I'm going to head out." Marla's face fell. Brielle looked panicked. The deal. "But," I continued, "I don't want to end the night. You wanted to talk. Marla, so why don't you all come with me? We can go to my apartment. It's quiet. I have the pumpkin pie there. We can finally have dessert and that chat." The relief on their faces was palpable. It was back on. The negotiation, the investment, the money. "Why, Elena," Marla said, her smile returning, genuine this time, and predatory. "What a lovely idea." "Perfect," Brielle said, already gathering her phone. We walked toward the exit, a parade. The townspeople saw us. The perfect family, reunited, the generous daughter, Elena, taking her proud parents and sister home for a private Christmas celebration. They smiled, they waved. It was the perfect holiday image. Marla and Brielle walked ahead, out the door, already whispering to each other, planning their financial attack. My father followed, but as he reached the doorway, he stopped. He paused, just for half a beat, a man caught in an invisible current. He looked back at me, his face a ruin of confusion, shame, and a flicker of something I dared not name. "Robert, come on!" Marla's sharp voice cut through the cold night air. He flinched. He looked at his wife, then back at me. He hesitated. He didn't just obey. He made a choice. He broke my gaze, turned, and pushed the door open, following them into the darkness. But he had hesitated. He had stopped. He had seen me. I walked out after him into the frigid air. A small, cold ember of hope held tight in my chest. The war was about to begin. The drive from the town hall to my apartment was silent. We took 2 cars, Everett and I in his rental, and the 3 of them, Robert, Marla, and a visibly vibrating Brielle, in my father's car. I saw in the rearview mirror that they had, in fact, brought the 2 younger children. Marla wouldn't dream of leaving them with a sitter on Christmas Eve. It would shatter the image. This was perfect. My boundary was already set. My apartment was clean, warm, and smelled of nothing. It was a sterile box of drywall and neutral carpet, and in this moment, it was the perfect courtroom. "The kids can sit over here," I said, my voice bright and utterly false. I pointed to a small, soft rug in the corner, where I had placed a stack of new, colorful picture books and some juice boxes. "There's a great book about a bear." Marla, preoccupied, waved them over. "Go read. Don't touch anything." The children, sensing the tension, scrambled to the corner and buried their heads in the books, a silent, colorful truce. Everett, in his dark suit, stood by the single window, a sentinel. He was not introduced as a lawyer. He was just my colleague, Everett, a silent, imposing presence that immediately threw Marla off her game. I went to the small kitchenette. I took the pumpkin pie, the one I had carried in last night, the one that had been the prelude to the slap, and placed it on the coffee table. I set down 4 plates, 4 forks. I had arranged the 4 chairs just as I planned. Me, Robert, Marla, Brielle. We sat. The air was thick and dead. Marla, ever the opportunist, could not stand the silence. She saw the pie, the plates, and her investor sitting across from her. She mistook this for a negotiation. She mistook my control for weakness. She leaned forward, her eyes glittering. "Well, this is cozy," she said. "Let's just get right to business. Elena, no need to drag it out. Obviously, your speech tonight was a message. We get it. You want in." I said nothing. I just looked at her. "So, here's the offer," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial. "We're all adults here tone. Shares for debt. We'll give you 20% of the brand. Brielle's Boutique, LLC. In exchange, you cover the outstanding lease payments. That $62,000 is just a scary number. We can talk them down, and you formally sign on as the primary backer, the new silent investor you're funding with that retirement money. We just need your signature on the new forms, preferably before Christmas, so we can file when the banks open." She smiled, a triumphant, closed-lip smile. She had just confessed to everything, framed as a business proposal. I did not look at her. I did not look at Brielle, who was nodding eagerly, her eyes shining with the prospect of her reopened store. I turned to my father. He was looking at his hands, his default position of non-existence. "Before we have pie, Dad," I said, my voice quiet. "A piece of mail came for you." I stood, walked to my briefcase by the door, and retrieved the single, thick envelope, the one from the Hearthline Mutual Courier. It was heavy, official, and had his name, Robert Kent, typed on the front, with a bright red, "Confidential, to be opened by addressee-only" stamp. I held it out to him. He looked up, confused. "What is this?" "It's from Hearthline Mutual," I said. "It was delivered tonight. I'm not allowed to open it. You are—" His hand, the one that had passed the gravy, was steady as he took it. He looked at the logo. He knew what this was. This was his inheritance, his money. Marla stiffened. "Robert, what is that? Is there a problem with the account?" He didn't answer her. He slid a finger under the flap. He pulled out the contents. It was not 1 page, but 3. The first was a cover letter. I watched his eyes scan the page. I watched the blood drain from his face, leaving a sick gray pallor under his holiday tan. I watched his breathing stop. The second page, I knew, was a copy of the forged spousal and heir consent form, the one he had submitted. The third page was a copy of my real, notarized signature, provided by Everett. "What is it, Robert?" Marla demanded, her voice rising. "What's wrong?" My father did not speak. His eyes were fixed on the second page, on the forged signature, Elena Voss, next to his own. He looked at that looping, practiced, fake signature, and then, slowly, as if moving underwater. He lifted his head. He did not look at me. He looked at Marla's hands, resting on her lap, the hands that had signed for packages, the hands that had slapped me, the hands that had held the pen. This letter," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. It says there was a fraudulent signature on the change of beneficiary form. Brielle let out a small, terrified squeak. It says, he continued, his voice trembling, that the change has been voided, that the primary beneficiary has been restored to Elena. Marla was on her feet. What? That's impossible. Robert, you signed it. It was all legal. You told them. It says, he choked out, that her signature was a forgery. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the children in the corner had stopped turning pages. I leaned forward, into that silence. I gently placed a new document on the table. It was Nadia's audit. She's right, I said, my voice level. It is impossible. It's impossible for a business with a 30% self-buy ratio to be profitable. That's what this report says. It's an independent audit of Brielle's boutique. I placed another document next to it. And this is the transcript of my recorded call with North Bank and Trust, confirming a $5,000 loan was opened in my name, without my presence, by a teller who is good friends with Marla. I placed another. And this is the transcript with Pinecrest Leasing, confirming my status as the sole guarantor, liable for $62,000. I leaned back. And this, I said, gesturing to Everett, who stepped forward from the window, is my legal counsel, Everett Lane. Marla's face contorted, the mask of the gracious matriarch melted, revealing the raw, cornered animal beneath. A lawyer? You brought a lawyer to Christmas dinner? Everett spoke, his voice filling the room, calm and cold as the night air. I'm here to advise my client, Ms. Voss, based on the documents we have secured, including the forged lease, the fraudulent loan, and the attempted forged transfer of the Hearthline Mutual Fund. Ms. Voss has several options. She can dispute the personal guarantee, which will force Pinecrest to sue her. We would then enter discovery, which would lead to criminal charges for forgery. She can file a report for identity theft, which would freeze all associated accounts and also lead to a criminal investigation, or, he paused. We can pursue civil mediation, a private, binding resolution. Marla found her footing, she sneered, falling back on her oldest, most reliable weapon, guilt. A lawsuit? You would sue your own family? After everything we've done for you? Families help each other. Elena, that's what they do. You have a big career. You have all that money. It was just money to you, to Brielle. It was her dream. The air crackled. This was the moment, the final accusation. I was the cold, rich daughter, withholding her warmth, her money. I looked at her. I held her gaze. I did not raise my voice. I spoke slowly, letting each word land with its full, devastating weight. This is not help, Marla. Her smile faltered. This, I said, is identity theft. It was the first time the words had been spoken between us. Identity, theft, not borrowing, not helping. Brielle broke. It was a sharp, ugly sound, a sob tearing from her chest. No, she cried, her hands flying to her face. Mom said we were just borrowing your name. She said you'd be fine with it. She said you had to help. She said it was just for a little while until the new line dropped. It was a full confession, an indictment of her mother. Marla's head snapped toward Brielle, her eyes blazing with betrayal. You shut up, Brielle. You're a child. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm not, Brielle shrieked. You lied. You said she would help. You told me to sign that email. My father was watching this, his face ashen. His world was collapsing. The two women he had built his silence around were tearing each other apart, and the truth was in the wreckage. His hand, the one not holding the letter, was resting on the table next to his empty plate. It began to tremble, a slight tremor at first, then a violent, uncontrollable shake. He reached for the dessert fork. His fingers fumbled against the metal. He couldn't grasp it. The shaking intensified, and with a terrible, loud clatter, the silver fork spun from his fingers, hit the plate, and bounced onto the hardwood floor. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard him make. He stared at the fork on the floor. He had lost control. In front of his wife, in front of me. His entire physical being was betraying his lifelong creed of silence. The room went dead. Brielle's sobs hitched. Marla's mouth snapped shut. I looked at the fork on the floor. I looked at my shaking father. I looked at my cornered stepmother and my broken sister. I did not ask for an apology. An apology was air. It was a feeling. It was as useless as gravy. I looked at Everett. He nodded. I turned back to the three of them. I don't want to hear that you're sorry, I said, my voice cutting through the silence, pulling them all back. I want a plan, a written remediation plan. Everett has the draft. It outlines the full, legal, and financial separation of my identity from this family's business. I pushed a final thick document to the center of the table. You will sign it, I said. Tonight, before the sun rises on Christmas morning, or Everett files his criminal complaint at 9 a.m. on December 26th. Marla's face snapped from terror to its most familiar setting, indignation, the mask of the victim. Sign it? She scoffed, pushing the document away with 2 fingers, as if it were contaminated. I will not. This is blackmail. Elena. And if you think, for 1 second, I will let you do this to your family. You are insane. I will not be threatened in your apartment. You want to file a lawsuit? Go ahead. Let's see how the town feels when they find out how the generous Elena Voss treats her own family. The perfect daughter from the city, coming home to sue her father and her struggling sister. You will be a pariah. They will know what an ungrateful, unfilial child you really are. It was her final, most potent weapon. Public shame. The one thing this town traded in more than cash. I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice. I simply reached into my purse, took out the small silver digital voice recorder I had purchased that morning, and pressed play. The room filled with a man's tired, tinny voice. This is Mark Jennings from Pinecrest Leasing. This message is for Elena Voss. We are calling to inform you that as the personal guarantor, you are now responsible for the full accelerated balance of the lease, totaling $62,040. I pressed stop. That, I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the silence, is the audio file I will provide to the court as Exhibit A, the one confirming my liability, and this, I slid a new paper onto the pile, is the report from my employer's IT department. It traces the IP address that requested my salary information from Arden Biomedical. The request that was used to secure the lease, the IP address, is yours, Marla, from your desktop computer at the Sycamore Lane house. Marla's face went white. The threat of public opinion was one thing. Digital, irrefutable proof was another. And finally, I said, as for the town's opinion, I agree. It's important. Which is why, just this afternoon, a full, independent audit of Brielle's boutique was delivered to Pastor Cole, the one Nadia Brooks completed. Brielle looked up, her face a mask of confusion. That's the report detailing the 30% self-buy ratio, the fake gift card sales, and the fraudulent revenue. It is sealed. It's in his possession as a neutral party, as a fail-safe to protect the scholarship fund's reputation in case of any financial disputes. He will only open it if this matter becomes public. So you are right, Marla. Let's not make this public, because if we do, the whole truth comes out. Not just your version. The community, her shield, was now my sword. The mirror she had relied on to reflect her own goodness was now in my hand, and it was showing the truth. All the fight drained out of her. She stared at the pile of paper, the audio recorder, the invisible, sealed envelope in the pastor's office. She was checkmated. My father, who had been staring at the fork on the floor, slowly lifted his head. He did not look at his wife. He did not look at Brielle. He looked at me. His eyes clear for the first time in my adult life. The fog of his passivity had burned away, leaving only a terrible, stark clarity. I have been silent, he whispered, his voice hoarse. For far too long. He reached for the thick remediation agreement. His hand was still shaking, but he grasped the pen. He pulled the document toward him, bypassing the cover page, and flipped to the signature block at the very end. He found the line marked Robert Kent. He signed his name. Then, he turned back to the addendum. It was a single page, a sworn affidavit. He read it aloud, his voice gaining a weak, reedy strength. I, Robert Kent, do hereby state that I was aware of the lease agreement for Brielle's boutique. I do hereby state that I signed a family consent form. I do hereby state that my daughter, Elena Voss, was not present at that signing, was not consulted, and did not, to my knowledge, give her consent for her name or her credit to be used as the personal guarantor. He signed that page, too, with a decisive, angry slash of ink. He had done it. He had picked a side. He had chosen truth, not peace. Brielle was watching him, not me. His signature was the final domino. Her father, her enabler, her protector, had just legally confirmed her fraud. She didn't just sob. She unraveled. It was not the cry of remorse. It was the terrified animal wail of someone who was about to lose everything. The store, the followers, the money, the reputation. She was crying for her own bankruptcy, for the public humiliation that would follow. Marla stared at her husband's signature. It was a betrayal deeper than any affair. He had, in writing, implicated her to save me. He had broken the pact. She had one bullet left. She turned to me, her face a grotesque twist of hatred. She fell back on the only thing she had left, the first sin. "This is all your fault," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "If you hadn't been late, if you hadn't walked in, 12 minutes late, and embarrassed this family, none of this would have happened. You and your petty, dramatic, selfish little scene." Ah, there it was. The original lie. The slap. The gravy. I did not get angry. I did not defend myself. I simply reached into the small black clutch I had carried to the gala. I pulled out a single, folded piece of cream-colored stationery. I unfolded it. "This," I said, "is from Mrs. Haley." I placed it on the table. It was the note, the handwritten, signed testimony of the woman I had helped. She was worried she would miss the 6 o'clock church bells on her radio program, I said, my voice soft, but carrying in the dead quiet of the room. She writes, right here. And the bells chimed just as Elena was finishing pushing my car clear. It was 6:08, 8 minutes past 6. I looked at Marla. I was 12 minutes late. It took me 4 minutes to walk back, stamp the snow off my boots, and open the front door. You slapped me at 6:12 for being 8 minutes late because I was saving an old woman from a snowdrift. The truth of that moment, the original violence that had started this entire cascade, was finally reversed. It was laid bare on the table, not as my shame, but as hers. Robert closed his eyes. He didn't need to see. He knew. Everett stepped forward, his voice merciful, professional. He was not here to gloat. He was here to close. "This document," he said, tapping the remediation agreement, "offers a clear path forward. It is not punitive. It is logistical." He outlined the terms. First, Brielle's Boutique, LLC, will be legally and properly dissolved. You will liquidate all remaining inventory to pay the outstanding debts, starting with Pinecrest Leasing. Second, he continued, all outstanding fraudulent accounts, the North Bank loan, the E. Voss boutique email, any and all utilities or vendor accounts will be closed. My client's name and social security number will be removed from every record. We have a 48-hour timeline on this. Third, he said, any remaining balance owed to my client, for the loan, for the payments you made using her retirement fund, for her legal fees, will be repaid, not as a lump sum, as a gradual, monthly payment, not to Elena. The payments will be made directly to the Winterlight Scholarship Fund, managed by Pastor Cole. It will be an anonymous donation. Elena will never see a cent. but you will pay it." It was brilliant. It was clean. It removed me from the equation entirely. It turned their debt into a public good, silencing any accusation that I was doing this for money. Brielle's sobs had subsided into choked, gulping breaths. She was staring at the liquidation clause. Her brand was dead. My father looked up from the table, his face old and gray. He looked at Everett, and then at me. What if they don't sign?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. He nodded at his wife and his stepdaughter. I held his gaze. I let him see the final, hard choice. "Then the next step is court," I said. "Everett will file the complaint on the morning of December 26th. It will be public, it will be criminal, and it will be permanent." I stood up. I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up the pie knife. "But it's Christmas Eve," I said, my voice light. "And this is a very good pie. I'm still offering everyone a slice." I cut the first piece. I held the pie knife, the slice poised on the server. The air in the small apartment was so thick it was hard to breathe. Brielle's quiet. Gulping sobs were the only sound. My father, his face gray and old, turned his head. He looked past me, past Everett, to his wife. Marla was rigid, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists on her lap. "Sign it, Marla," he said. His voice was quiet, hollowed out. But it was not the voice of the man who passed the gravy. It was a command. All the years of avoidance, of peaceful, cowardly silence, had collapsed, leaving this single, hard decision. Marla's eyes flew to his, wide with betrayal. She looked at me, at the agreement, at Everett, and then at the two small children in the corner, who were watching, their eyes wide with confusion. I saw the frantic calculation in her gaze, her reputation in town, the judgment of the neighbors, the mask of the good mother, all of it at war with the cold, legal, inescapable ruin in front of her. Her shoulders slumped. The fight was over. She reached out a shaking hand, took the pen from the table, and pulled the document toward her. I glanced at Brielle. Her phone, which she had propped up on the table, was still silently streaming. I could see the viewer count ticking up. 100, 150. People were gathering online to watch the silent, tear-streaked breakdown of the local girl boss. Brielle looked at the climbing numbers, at the screen that had been her life's blood. Then she looked at her mother, her hand shaking as she held the pen. With a sudden, jerky movement, Brielle reached out and hit the power button. The ring light died. The screen went black. She had, for the first time, unplugged herself from the virtual applause. Marla's signature was a violent, angry slash of ink. Brielle's was a wet, shaky, childish scrawl. Two signatures. Everett stepped forward. He calmly took the document, reviewed the signatures, and affixed a small, embossed notary stamp, signing his name as a legal witness. He closed the folder. The sound was soft, but final. "The terms are now binding," Everett said to the room, "and as stipulated in Section 5, all financial restitution will be paid directly to the Winterlight Career Fund, managed by Pastor Cole." This was my last, non-negotiable condition. It silenced the inevitable story that I had come home to shake down my family. I wasn't getting their money. I was ensuring their debt was paid to the community, an anonymous, ironic penance. The legal transaction was over. The emotional fallout was just beginning. My father stood. He did not put on his coat. He walked to my briefcase, took out a blank pad of paper and a pen, and returned to the table. He sat, not in his own chair, but in the one next to me. He began to write. He wrote for several minutes, his hand unsteady, the scratching of the pen loud in the quiet room. He tore the single sheet off, folded it once, and pushed it across the table. He didn't say a word. He just left it there, a white flag on the dark wood, resting beside the faint, silvery scar that had marked that table since my 12th birthday. Marla rose, her movements stiff. She looked at me, her face a mask of exhausted fury. She raised her hand, a clumsy, hesitant gesture, not to strike, but perhaps to touch my bruised cheek in some twisted final ritual of reconciliation. I didn't flinch. I just leaned back, a small half step, just enough to be out of her reach. The air between her fingers and my face was a new, permanent, invisible wall. She let her hand fall. I gave her a small, formal nod. The boundary was set. Brielle, her face swollen and blotchy, pulled on her coat. She looked at me, her voice a child's whisper. Do you hate me? I looked at her. This construct of Marla's ambition and my father's silence. No, Brielle, I said, and I meant it. I don't hate you. I hate how you used me. I hate what you did, but I don't hate you. A distant sound cut through the night. The bells from the church, ringing midnight. It was Christmas Day. The sound broke the spell. The two children on the rug, hearing the bells, scrambled up. It's Christmas! My half-brother shouted, holding his picture book. Can we read the poem now, please? He was looking at me, his face bright and innocent, oblivious to the signed confession, to the ruins of the adult world around him. I looked at Everett. He was sliding the locked briefcase under his chair. The evidence was secure. I turned to my half-brother and my voice softened, a gear shifting that I hadn't realized was still possible. Yes, I said. I'd like that very much. Let's hear the poem. I sat and I listened, as he read about stars and reindeer, the simple, kind words washing over the wreckage. My phone vibrated, a text message from Pastor Cole. Update received. Elena, the envelope from Ms. Brooks is sealed and locked in the church safe, per our agreement. It will only be opened upon formal notification of a breach from you and your counsel. God bless you. The failsafe was armed. The poem finished. Everett stood. The family shuffled toward the door. A broken, silent procession. But my father did not move, in a complete break from the ritual of his entire life. He walked to the coffee table. He began picking up the dirty pie plates. He carried them to the small kitchen sink. I heard the tap turn, the rush of hot water. He began to wash the dishes. It was a simple, mundane task, but in the silence of that apartment, it was a vow. It was the loudest thing he had ever said. Marla watched him, her face unreadable, then zipped her son's coat. As she passed me at the door, she paused. She wouldn't look at me. She stared at the wall just past my ear. Thank you, she whispered, the words sounding like they were tearing her throat. For not doing this in front of them. The children. I looked at her, then at my half-brother and half-sister, sleepy and confused, but safe. I protect the children, Marla, I said, my voice low and absolute. I was protecting them tonight, and I will be protecting them from now on. The door clicked shut. Everett gave me a single, tired nod and left. I was alone. The apartment was silent, save for the sound of my father, still washing the dishes. I walked into the kitchen. He didn't look up. I saw the heavy ceramic gravy boat on the counter, the one I must have packed with the pie. He scrubbed it, his back to me. I looked at the old dining table, the one with the scratch. I ran my finger along the groove. For 20 years, I had wanted to sand it down, to polish it away, to erase the proof. I pulled my hand back. I would leave it. It was a reminder. The snow was falling heavily now, a clean white sheet covering the town. I took out my phone. I sent one last text to Everett. File the guarantee removal tomorrow. Start the identity debt clearance protocols. I put the phone down. I made myself a cup of hot cocoa. I sat at the table, across from the folded note my father had written. I didn't read it. Not yet. I just held the warm mug. And for the first time in my life, I felt a new kind of silence. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of things unsaid. It was the clean, quiet, empty silence of a ledger that was finally, completely, closed. It was mine. Thank you all for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. So please comment below, and let's connect and share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.